F it, we'll do it live. Hey, welcome to Casual Friday. You're here, we're here. This is Casual Friday. And I am GM Jim. Over there is.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Doyle. We're keeping it casual.
All right.
Hey, I'm
And
Brad
I'm
Wolf
here.
with Diarden.
And so this is Casual Friday, and I hope your weekend is going well. Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant. This Friday, hey Twin Steel, hey Mr. Hume, and the Olympics are on. This is probably my peak patriotism every 4 years when this happens. The time when I feel the most American is during the Olympics, and also I watch the Olympics and go, hey, you know what, rugby's really cool, and then I forget about it for another 4 years. I was just watching shot putting. I'm like, yeah, throw the thing, awesome. A bunch of sports I don't care about at all for the like 1,200 days in between.
But I think that makes it better. It makes it like more special. It's like, oh yeah, rugby's a thing. Like it's very American perspective, I guess. But like,
Sure.
yeah, I don't watch a lot of gymnastics, but when I do, it's my favorite thing.
I've got a friend from New Zealand, and all I would have to say is like, tell me about rugby, and I could become a rugby fan real quick because he is all about it.
Yeah,
I get it. I see the appeal. So I had a little bit of COVID, so I spent most of this week like half awake on a couch watching the Olympic highlights. It's like, yeah, go, you do stuff.
So, but we're not here really to talk about the Olympics. We're here to talk about tabletop role-playing games, Tater Pigs, and things related to Tater Pigs. And the main thing to talk about is that this week, as of yesterday, August 1st, year of our Lord 2024, the embargo on the 5.5 Player's Handbook was lifted. And we've got some thoughts. None of us personally received a copy, an advanced copy of the Player's Handbook. We're not bitter about that at all, but a lot of other people have been talking about it, and so we have thoughts about their thoughts. So I am going to share a document here, and Brad is going to take point talking about the 2024 Player's Handbook.
So there's fewer rules, which I like. I think I literally fist pumped when I heard that. So there's no more ability check contests. Passive perception is not in the player's handbook. It tells you how to calculate passive perception, but there's no rules for it. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like in the DMG. There's no group checks in the player's handbook. There's no forced march rules in the player's handbook. Encumbrance has been extremely streamlined. It basically says if your DM decides you have too much stuff, he can make you consult the rules and make a check, right? Or like you get a penalty or whatever. So the encumbrance rules are like way reduced. And the rules for squeezing, like a big creature trying to squeeze into a small space, it only does difficult terrain now. There's not all those extra penalties that came with squeezing into a small space. So those are the rules that aren't there anymore.
How does no passive perception work?
So it's like I said, it still tells you how to calculate your passive perceptions like number, right? But it doesn't give any rules around passive perception. So I'm assuming those rules are going to be in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So I'm not really sure if that's going to be a optional rule. But they also did away with the ability check contests. Like that's not in the rules either. So like there's no more you're trying to persuade the NPC, so you roll charisma, I roll wisdom, and whoever rolls highest wins. Like those contests are not in the rules anymore. So it seems like they've streamlined the mechanics, so it's always going to be the dungeon master sets a difficulty check target number, and you roll, which I think is better. Because you don't have the shenanigans of, oh crap, I rolled a 1 for my NPC and now the players have just persuaded my NPC to do something silly, right? You're able to set a like reasonable DC. So if the players go to the queen and say, I want your huge tracts of land, the queen can say no, right? Or they can say, wait, do you literally mean huge tracts of land? If you're talking literal land, then the DC for that's going to be a 20, right? Or something like that. So it's not like they roll, you roll, and you compare. Those contests are gone.
Wizards and Word Brides, we are going to talk about hiding without passive perception in just a couple minutes, because there are revised rules for hiding, and it is pretty interesting how they have chosen to do it. How often do you really use encounter squeeze spaces?
Right, and I think that's the point. Is they took out a lot of extraneous stuff to streamline the rules, and I think overall that's a good thing. Like we've said that multiple times, is what we wanted is like less of the unnecessary rules, right?
Yeah. So Brad, just tell me when you're ready for the next slide.
Yeah. Go ahead and jump to the next slide.
I will say the one like shadow that I had, like I had the same impulse, like fewer rules, yes, in the PHB. And I just like in the back of my mind, there's a little voice like, did it all just end up in the Dungeon Master side of things? And we're not going to have an answer for 2 months. And now the DM's going to have to do a little bit more and less is on the player's plate. And I hope that's not true. But
right, I would hope those things would be optional rules. I hope there's like a list of optional rules in the DMG that you can implement or not. Right, I think that would make more sense.
Yeah,
because that was the selling point of 5th edition originally, back during what do they call it in D&D Next, the playtest?
Yeah,
that was the selling point, that it was going to be more modular, and we really didn't get that modularity. Other than like feats were optional, right? That sort of stuff. But yeah, so hopefully if they bring some of this stuff back, it's all under optional rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
We should point out here that the reason you're seeing Tree Ant Monk's face on the screen is that
he's awesome and will be joining us. No, sorry.
He did receive an advanced copy of the PHB, and so he made a video. And so we took some screenshots of his video, and we didn't ask him for permission to do this, but we don't think he would be upset by it, so it's probably fine. Chris, if you're upset by this, just let us know, and we will issue a very heartfelt apology.
He's on vacation. We didn't want to bother him. If you don't know Tree and Monk, and I bet you do, he's my vibe of optimizer. I mean, yeah, optimizer is not a dirty word. I think he would go for that. A very smart, like crunchy, math-based guy who recognizes what's important.
Right. And I said last week, if there's anybody that knows the rules better than Jeremy Crawford, it's Chris from Tree Ant Monk's Temple for sure.
Yeah.
And definitely, if you want like a deeper dive on all this stuff, go watch his videos that we got these slides from. And he's doing videos like there's one every day this week. So he prepared a ton of content because he got this back in June, so he's covering all of it in detail. It's good. It's good stuff if you're willing to watch, hour and a half long videos back to back to back.
Yeah.
So the next thing here that he shows, he made a cool little chart. This is his chart that he made of all the different actions you can take now. And I don't know how well you guys can see this, but everything's now divided into different actions. So you still have the dash action, the disengage action, dodge action. Help action now actually includes using the first aid. So now the what do you call the medicine kit or whatever is now a help action.
Yeah, the healer's kit.
Healer's kit, right, is now a help action. So that change, for example, affects like the thief, who can make a utilize like action as a bonus action, right? So now the thief, based on this action economy, the thief can't use the healer's kit as a bonus action because now it's considered a help action. So, so the action economy here is interesting because they've included almost all the skills. Like there is the study action, which is now for all the intelligence-based skills. The search action is for most of the wisdom-based skills. And then the influence action is for all the charisma-based skills and animal handling. So by grouping your different skill checks into these different actions, I think that'll streamline the wording of the game. So like you'll be able to say, you know, this magic item gives you advantage on all influence actions, right? Instead of having to spell out which skills that you get advantage from the magic item, right? Or this ability gives you, this ability allows you to use the help action as a bonus action. Like that used to be the mastermind rogue can do a help action as a bonus action, right? So these kind of categories help you kind of streamline the rules when you're writing things out. The one thing that's interesting here is that both athletics and acrobatics are not included in any of these actions. So I'm wondering, because I haven't actually seen the book, I'm wondering if athletics and acrobatics are going to be part of your movement instead of part of your action. So that would be my interpretation of this, based on the fact that those two skills are the only two skills that don't show up in one of these action options.
Like if you want to climb a wall, to make an athletics check to do it as part of your movement.
Right. So you would be able to climb the wall and then make an attack, or climb the wall and cast a spell. Right? Because technically a skill check is supposed to be an action. But a lot of I think a lot of DMs don't do it that way.
I think if you scratch at attack too, that's good. That like opens up into a ton of like, I think shove and like a lot of those athletics things I think are going to fall under the attack action when you drill down the next level.
Right. And I think we've seen that because I want to say in the playtest you could make shove and those kind of things as part of your attack. So if you have multi-attack, you would be able to shove as one of your attacks and still make an attack with your weapon, right? Because you got two attacks. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with athletics and acrobatics, since they are not included directly into any one of these actions. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. Going back, Twin's still saying they're learning from Pathfinder. Yes, like recall knowledge not being a thing. Like it's a thing in my game, but it's not in the book really. Like the study is on here, which means somebody like a wizard or like a ranger, like study as a bonus action, gains some insight about your enemy or the situation. Spelling these things out means mechanically maybe there's more coming for these. They're going to plug into feats and subclasses and.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought.
Yeah.
And then if we go on to the next one, one spell slot per turn. This replaces the old rule of if you use a bonus action to cast a spell, you can't use your action to cast a spell, right? That was or something like that, right? The wording on that old rule was always super confusing. This one just makes it, no pun intended, it just spells it out. One spell slot per turn. So this gets rid of the old 2-level fighter dip, where you would take your action surge to be able to cast 2 spells in a turn, right? And the other thing about this is it says 1 spell slot per turn. So if you have an ability that allows you to cast a spell without using a spell slot, then you will be able to cast 2 spells in 1 turn. So if you have like the Fey Step feat, or the new Fey Patron Warlock allows you to Misty Step without expending a spell slot, right? Or some variation of that. So So you will have some instances where you'll be able to cast 2 spells in a turn, but it's going to be related to feats and class abilities.
And since it says per turn, per round, and not per round, that doesn't mess with reactions. You can still shield.
Right. Yeah. So you can still shield.
Counterspell.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So that fixes the old bonus action spell thing that nobody really got right.
I'm so happy to never have that conversation. I mean, we will have that conversation again, but I'm very happy that I will have that conversation less often.
Yeah, well, the new conversation is simply, nope, that's not the rule anymore. Here's the rule, right?
You're right.
Yeah, you don't have to explain the nuances of what it means. If you cast a spell as a bonus action, then you can only cast a cantrip with your action. Like, that old wording is messy.
Was the 2-level fighter dip really a problem?
I don't think it was a problem. I think it was just thematic. Like, it didn't really fit, for a lot of folks. A lot of folks don't like multi-classing for mechanical reasons, right? The 1-level cleric dip or the 2-level fighter dip. I shouldn't say most, but a lot of folks want multi-classing to be more of, what's the theme behind this? What's your character's story? Versus, I just want this ability to stack with that ability.
Twin Steel says the 2-level fighter dip was a problem. I haven't really encountered that at any tables I've run or played at.
You play with writers. You play with fiction guys. You play with story forward people. The power gamers out there are they're tinkering, and I'm not hating, but we're playing different games sometimes out there.
But it was a frequent optimization option, right? There was a lot of optimization builds that included the 2-level fighter dip.
Many optimization builds. All right, next slide.
What we got next? Oh yeah, this is just cleaner wording, and this is like examples of little changes where they've cleaned up the wording. The melee weapon attack is now just a melee attack, so there's no, because in 2014 there were different types of attacks depending on how it was worded. Some would say an attack, some would say a melee attack, some would say a melee weapon attack. It seems like they're trying to do away with all that, so there's just melee attacks and ranged attacks.
Thank you. Like that.
Yeah. So that's
Wizards and Warp Drive says the power gamer should go back to 4E. I don't know. They should try 5.5. It's got a lot more crunch to it.
Yeah. There are still going to be a lot of ways to optimize, but I think it's going to be largely related to matching feats with class abilities, right? So there's still going to be incentive to multi-class for that reason, but I don't think the optimization is going to be as dependent on loophole stuff as it was before.
Yeah, and my theory about why feats have gone from an optional rule, part of that modularity, to now being everybody just gets a feat, is I think over the next 3 to 5 years there are a lot more feats coming from WotC. I think there are going to be books of feats. Every adventure, every supplement, everything that comes from WotC is going to have a feat section to try to sell more books to players. Like every like Bigby's book about them giants had a couple subclasses, a couple feats. Every book is going to be like that, so they can sell to more than just game masters. Because if everybody is feats part of the core player PC identity, then you're going to want to gobble up all those feats and get access to as many as possible, so they're going to fling them out as left and right.
Yep, and they've done away with the a la carte purchases on D&D Beyond. So you won't be able to buy just the feats and just the subclasses like you used to.
Yeah.
You'll have to buy the whole book.
Yep.
Which feels dumb to me. Like, it's bad. One, it's bad for the player experience, but two, it doesn't. We'll see. I'm not sitting on top of their ivory tower, but like, just from a business standpoint, it seems you're gonna make less money doing it that way. But we'll find out.
I think so. It might have been a decision more on the capacity of D&D Beyond, like the as far as the ability to manage all those purchases and know which ones you have. So when they update something, they have to make sure they don't accidentally mess up those little microtransactions that you made.
That's insightful, actually. That could be.
Feet fetish.
Hi-yo.
Yes, Kelf, they do have a feet fetish.
Yes.
And by the season pass, I think a la carte purchases will come back. I think because D&D Beyond, I think it was a D&D Beyond problem because updating basically every part of the system is going to be updated to do the new character sheets. I think continuing to support a la carte purchases with older databases and older front end was too hard. And once it's all 5.5 and they have 5.0 separated into legacy content, I think they're going to come back.
That would make sense, right? So they address the problem that I just described and then bring it back. Yeah.
Because it raises an interesting question. I own this feat. I don't own Tasha's. I own this feat out of Tasha's that you just changed. Do I get it for free?
Right.
Now you can't. I can't do that.
Yeah. So it would have made sense to turn off the a la carte purchases in the interim while they're updating everything. That makes sense.
Yeah. I can see that logistically.
All right. What's our next slide here?
Controlling amount.
Controlling amounts. This is cleaned up a little bit. It's less complicated, and your mount now just goes on your turn. So that's just an example of cleaning up the wording and streamlining the rules. As is the next one, which is underwater combat. So now underwater combat is just you have disadvantage on attack rolls unless you have a piercing weapon. There's no longer the short list. Like you can only use these weapons without disadvantage, right? It was like the trident and the spear and a couple others. Now it's just anything that deals piercing damage. So that's another example of streamlining things. And all ranged attacks have disadvantage underwater.
Which could you make the argument that you cannot jab your longsword forward to make it do piercing instead of slashing? Why not? Why can't you jab your longsword forward straight to do piercing?
Because I just need some way to make tridents relevant, man.
Yeah. Well, and as a DM, if you ask me that question in game, I would say sure, it just does as much damage as a spear instead of as much damage as a longsword because it's basically a spear now.
There you go.
That's how I would rule it. Yeah.
So Wizards and Warp Drives, do you really own the content? That is something we could discuss for several hours.
Yeah.
In the 21st century, content ownership, the definition has changed greatly.
In 21st century, content owns you.
Yeah.
Well, the country, yes.
All right. What do we got next here? Oh, go ahead.
Was there not fire resistance underwater in 5th edition, regular 5th edition?
It feels like there had to be. It comes up so infrequently. I hope none of my players are watching. They were about to have a big fight underwater for the first time in forever. So we got some. I don't think they're ready for that. But it's so infrequent, right? At least for me. We had Kraken Week just recently, but there was. Yeah, there has to be. There has to be.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So some of these aren't drastic changes. Again, they're just cleaning things up and making them a little more streamlined. The moving around other creatures. This came up in one of our discussions before, Jim. You were asking about like small creatures being able to occupy another creature's space. So the moving around creatures now, you can pass through an allied's space that if they have the incapacitated condition. Otherwise, they are counted as difficult terrain. Unless that creature is tiny or your ally. Right? So you can pass through a creature's space, but it's difficult terrain. Which means now I guess you can pass through an enemy space as long as you're counting.
It doesn't change the rules of opportunity attacks, but it says if it's 2 sizes larger or smaller, so a human can jump over a fairy, or a halfling can go through the legs of a storm giant.
Right.
Because those would be 2 sizes, but opportunity attacks still apply.
Right. So hopefully that opens up a little more movement in combat. Because before you couldn't pass through an enemy space. Wasn't that the rule before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was very tactically sound in hallways and things like that. You could just summon a large creature to block off a hallway, and then the enemy basically couldn't do anything about it.
Right. And you could even trap somebody with what was the conjure animals that allowed you to summon 2 dire wolves. So that's 2 large creatures, one on either, and you could put the one on either side and just block somebody in.
Yeah.
So you can't willingly move in a space occupied by another creature. If somehow you end up in a space with another creature, you have the prone condition, unless again you're tiny or a larger size than the other creature. So like if you got blasted with Thunderwave and you end up in the square with another creature, that's going to cause you to have the prone condition.
And that makes sense, right? If 2 people are trying to stand in the exact same spot, somebody's going to end up on the ground.
Right.
This came up a lot in a campaign. I played a warlock, and I was a big fan of Eldritch Blast with the repelling blast. So every time I zap somebody, I push them back 10 feet and knock them into their allies. Because the way that DM ruled it was somebody would get pushed to a different square.
Mm-hmm.
But this is even better. I push you into that square. One of you is going to end up prone.
Yeah, well, and this would be really good for mid-level play when your Goliath can make themselves large. Then your Warlock can push a target into the Goliath and knock them down, and then the Goliath goes on their turn, and the target's prone, so they have advantage. That would be a cool player combo you could do.
Only if you're a halfling in a backpack. I'm mostly like this. I do like... It used to be your ally was difficult terrain, and like I've had so many players convince me why that shouldn't be, that I stopped doing it that way. But like, I do. Like, we were talking about Tumble in the chat. I like the idea of it's difficult to get through. I mean, I guess that's what difficult terrain is. But you shouldn't be able to get through my space for free. And I guess if I spent my reaction, I don't get to attack you. Like it's, I don't know. I understand the problem that they're fixing. I would have fixed it differently.
What it doesn't say here that is actually in the PHP is if you move through another creature space, you have to say, "Oh, just gonna sneak right past you." That's part of you. Oh,
you have to do this as if it makes you smaller. I don't. In the grocery store, I'm always. Oh, all right.
All right. So, any other thoughts on the moving around other creatures?
No, I like this clarification.
Yeah, I think it's an improvement too. And then the next one is if a tie occurs, the DM decides the order among tied monsters, and players decide order among tied players. So this is referring to initiative. Because one of the things Chris pointed out is that a lot of people use dexterity as the deciding factor, but that's not actually in 5th edition. That's from older editions, and a lot of us have just transposed that over to 5th edition. But this clarifies that if a tie occurs during the initiative, then the DM decides among tied monsters, and the players decide among tied characters.
I don't love rules that are not rules. Like the DM decides. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think that's like the first sentence in this book most of the time. Like, give me option. And again, this is probably in the DMG, but give me options or suggestions at least. Yeah, like it's implicit that the dungeon master can change things. Okay, cool. The deal is we're doing roll-offs unless you say otherwise or whatever it is. Give me a rule, especially if you're going to take 3 lines to say stuff.
Yeah. So this is one I like the fact that they're empowering DMs, but I think this is one that you could in just as many words have a clear rule. Like and I think the dexterity rule has existed across more than one edition, and you could just say if in case of a tie, the creature with the higher dexterity goes first.
What I like to do is if two players tie, which doesn't seem to happen that often in an initiative, but they can decide each turn who's going to go or even team up.
Mm-hmm.
And players really like the team up maneuver. You know, I'll do this, knock him prone, then you do that, just like we were talking about with moving through spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could stick with the first sentence of this. If you know, if a tie occurs, it's up to the players to decide among players, and it's up to the DM to decide about the monsters. But then you could change the second sentence, which is if there's a tie between a player and a monster, then compare dexterity. Like that would be that would give you the freedom that I like about this, but it would address what Ryan was saying about I want an actual rule, so it's not always just the DM making the determination.
Yeah.
Because it feels like this is like the alternate rule to everything always. Like if X occurs, the DM decides Y. Like that's on every page. I don't think you can like you can say that once.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me, I don't know, griping.
Yeah, I mean you could definitely say that at the beginning of the book, and that would, you know, be a blanket for all these situations. Yeah.
Rule number 1, DM is God.
All right, what's our next slide here?
You are in my world now, baby.
Oh, so this is the saving throw one. Oh, what's different about this is you can choose to fail. A lot of us have played it that way for a long time, but now it's actually in the rules. If you want to fail your saving throw, you can choose to fail.
Approve.
Yeah. So, and then we got a couple more DM decide, or well, one more DM decide here on the next slide. And
Brad, I wanted to ask you something about this, where it says if a target is forced to make a save and lacks the ability score used by it. This puzzles me. What save would require an ability score that someone does not have?
It's fascinating, right?
Who does not have all 6 stats?
I want to like run to like Feeble Mind or something, right? Like what is that? That implies something somewhere. Your ability score drops to 1. You no longer have the ability to charisma. I don't know what that looks like narratively.
Do you think that's what it means?
I don't know. I don't know what it means, but it's got to. Well, no, it doesn't. It could just be a mistake. Maybe it meant something 4 iterations ago, and they got through the edit. But
yeah, Twin Steel says like undead didn't have Constitution in 3.5, but this sentence puzzles me because all monster stat blocks that I've seen have all 6 ability scores.
Right.
Yeah, a freaking Sparrow has all 6. Like everything has everything. So it's if that might be different. That might be different now.
Yeah,
it's in the monster manual. I'm curious if it's in the spells. Maybe we started to get spells come through.
Yeah,
but I don't know what it means. But I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, in all the content I consumed in order to be ready for this, nobody pointed that line out. Jim, you're the first one to ask what that line means.
I'm writing that down as I got a point.
One internet point.
So.
Yeah, that's very puzzling. All right, moving on. Surprise.
Yeah, so the surprise is dramatically different, and it's not nearly as complicated, which is a good thing, but it's also not nearly as like exciting. So if a combatant is surprised by combat starting, the combatant has disadvantage on their initiative roll. So that's all it is. You just have disadvantage on initiative if you're surprised.
I think this is fantastic. This might be my favorite 5.5 rule. And when one of those videos where Todd Kendrick was interviewing Jeremy Crawford, he asked him about it, and he was explaining it, and I was like, nah, I don't know about this. But then Jeremy said, too often in combat, if an entire group is surprised, makes combat way too swingy. And that's a good point because, the first round of combat is definitely the most important round of combat, especially once you're higher level and have access to things like control spells, knocking creatures prone, that kind of stuff. You can severely change the whole outlook of any combat in just the first few actions. And so I think this is perfect.
Right. And the other thing here is the DM can decide if a creature is surprised. So you can be hidden and you can attack, and therefore you can create surprise as a player. But the DM can also just decide that the creature is surprised based on the interpretation of the situation. You're like, we're in the middle of this deep intellectual conversation, and I decide I'm just going to sucker punch this guy. The DM could say, yeah, that's surprise. Right? So that way the target would roll their initiative with disadvantage.
Yeah.
So I think overall it's streamlined and good. It's not as sexy as previous editions, but the fact that it's efficient and easy to use, I love. And then we can get into hide, the hide ability.
This one might be a little controversial.
You think?
Can we just Kelf has made a suggestion in chat, which I think might be insightful. We don't have enough information.
Maybe
but
some
he's saying
don't
like
have the ability to save against certain things.
So if the monster doesn't have, because they're spelling out the saves, if I don't have a dex save spelled out, I auto fail. That's a possible interpretation.
Because the stat blocks are a little different now, because before you would have the 6 ability scores, you'd have the ability score and the modifier in listed, and then if they had saves in certain things, it was listed on a line below. And then if a monster didn't have a save number listed, you would just use the ability score, whatever their modifier was to the ability score. But now they have, every monster has the ability score, the modifier, and the save listed in a 9x2, or no, it would just be 12, I don't know, in a block. So they're all listed.
Yeah, it's a little like chart now for stats and saves that show all of them,
which I like. But it does, the language, it said ability, not save. Like, no one's missing a column in that table. I mean, maybe I can turn it off, or maybe some stat blocks don't have all those columns. And what does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Unless, maybe it's possible to have like a magic item, right? A magic item, an intelligent magic item would have an intelligence and a charisma score. Right?
Oh, interesting. So maybe there's things that are not quite. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I just thought of that. So like a magic sword that's sentient would have an intelligence score and a charisma score, but it doesn't have a strength or con, so it wouldn't be able to make a con save. So theoretically, you could cast a spell against the sword, maybe.
I think Brad's got it. That sounds very logical. Because if this is the case, if it's that if you don't have proficiency, you auto-fail, that is a huge change to all monster stat blocks, if it's something like that.
Yeah. I don't think that would be the case, because then your monsters would be too frail. And then
it's tricky, though.
And it would become very meta as well, right? Because you'd want to know which monsters don't have which saving throws, right? This is very, very meta game.
But it's an exercise of trying to like logic out a thing that is not necessarily logical, because a bunch of people voted, and like, is this an answer to like fix, save, or suck? Like, if it fix, save, or suck, I don't know if it makes the game better, but if like this save or suck so automatically works if this guy doesn't have proficiency in whatever wisdom, like. I don't like it, but I know there's a bunch of people who would vote yes for that. But that's wild. It can't be that, right? It can't be that.
Yeah, we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
So the hide action.
Yes.
Yeah. So I say we tackle the initiative part, and then we can come back, Jim, if you want to explain how passive perception works now with that. It's because that was something you said before. So as far as initiative goes, right, we said that if you're surprised, you have disadvantage. Well, if you successfully hide, you now have the invisible condition. And if we jump to the next slide, we'll see that the invisible condition means you have advantage on initiative. So I still think surprise is pretty powerful, because if you're hidden and you surprise your target, you now have advantage on initiative and they now have disadvantage on initiative. So I think that kind of makes up for the lack of, power, right, from switching surprise to just disadvantage without having what we've had in previous editions where you just slaughter whoever you surprise.
I think what I really like about this is that this essentially ends the discussion, the begging from the edgelord rogues who want to hide right in the middle of a brightly lit room, because you just can't. It says you can't. You have to be heavily obscured or behind 3/4 of total cover, and you have to be out of line of sight, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a rogue player that I've DM'd for or been in a game with where they're just like, I'm going to hide right here in the middle of the battlefield. It says hide on my character sheet, so I want to do it.
Right.
And there was no rule that said you have to jump behind barrels. It doesn't say I have to go behind barrels on my character sheet. It just says I can try to hide as a bonus action. But here it's spelled out, and they can't do it anymore.
Right. Now, I've also seen the opposite of that situation where a DM didn't let somebody hide because they had ducked into a closet, and his rationale was, well, they know you're in the closet, they saw you go in there, but they don't know where you are in the closet. So if they stick their head in there, you should still get a surprise attack, in my opinion, right? Because they don't know if you're coming high, coming low, whatever, right? So I think that this solves both of those edge cases, right? The one you were just talking about where it's like trying to hide where there's nothing to hide behind. But if you have 3/4 cover, you can be considered hidden because they don't know where you are on the other side of that cover.
Yeah.
Not where exactly you are, anyway.
I like it. I like spell out rules for us, and we'll decide if what's the rules that we're using. Mm-hmm. That's my gripe about, like, the DM decides on initiative ties, which is way less significant than the hide action. But like, if you're going to have a textbook of rules, please give me all the rules.
Right. So now,
go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I was just saying, are we ready to talk about the passive perception stuff?
Yeah, sure.
So the bottom half of this hide action, like the second paragraph, on a successful check, you have the invisible condition. Make note of your check's total, which is the DC for a creature to find you with the wisdom check. So, and Chris made a note here in the red that the wisdom check now is the search action. So somebody has to, if you're hidden, the other person has to take the search action to find you, and the DC for that search action is based on the roll of your initial stealth check. So again, we're comparing the roll to a DC. We're not doing contested rolls, and then also there's no need for a passive perception in order to do this.
And the sorry, I got distracted here by Wizards and Wordrive's comment about the halfling who hides inside of his pants. Which, if you can describe the pants, I might let you do it. Because I like the halfling in big pants.
I feel like that makes you more conspicuous. Your MC Hammer running around, that doesn't make you
can't touch
invisible.
This.
Can't touch this. Okay. You know what? I did not. All right. We conceded. That's legit.
The hammer precedent has been established. I think, Chris highlighting this part of the sentence, the parens there in red is very important, because this makes the rogue's hide bonus action incredibly powerful, because any monster who wants to find them has to spend a turn looking for them. but this makes more sense for high CR creatures who have legendary actions that they could make perception checks as a legendary action. I've always seen that in stat blocks before and thought, well, that's a useless legendary action.
Right.
Because I always house ruled it as if your hide check was under their passive, you didn't fool them at all. But now this is very different because they have to actively look for you.
Right.
And if you're facing multiple enemies, then one can find you and shout out to the others where you are, but that's still incredibly powerful. I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Yeah, so that's one less action out of the action economy, right? You got 7 goblins and one of them has to spend the action. Right now, as a group, the goblins are only making 6 attacks instead of 7.
Yeah. And Twin Steel, technically, yes, if the PC walks around the corner and they are obscured or behind 3/4 cover or total cover and out of line of sight, if you meet all those conditions, then you roll a stealth check, and technically, even if everybody saw you walk around the corner, you would be hidden.
Right. Well, because if someone's going to attack you, they have to go around that corner in order to attack you, and they don't know if you're right there at the door frame with a dagger ready to punch them in the face with it, right? Or if you're on 10 feet away in the opposite corner of the room with your bow out, right? So,
I guess what makes it fair then, if using the going around the corner example, is if that person walks around the corner and that therefore then establishes line of sight, you're no longer hidden.
Right. Yeah. But but if combat hasn't started yet, you would have advantage on your initiative because you were hiding around the corner. If you're in the middle of combat, at most, the rogue might get advantage on sneak attack, right? But beyond that, hiding around the corner doesn't have any mechanical value other than those 2 things.
Yeah. Galaxy Fox Night Skyer says, I'll let my players use a bonus action or even a reaction to search. And that sounds fair to me with this super powerful buff to hiding. To make it not cost a whole action, to make it just cost a bonus action, since a lot of monsters have bonus actions and reactions now.
Right.
Chewing that up feels maybe fair. Again, we need to see the monster manual.
And I'm guessing it's maybe not so clever, but I bet there's a feat that'll make search bonus action.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like what was the feat that was kind of cool flavor but was always subpar, where you could take it and it helped you, gave you resistance to traps. It was
all those trap one, like the spellfind traps, and it's dungeoneer. I think it was dungeoneer or dungeoneering.
Dungeoneer or dungeon delver or something like that.
Dungeon delver looks so cool on the tin. And it's just like, hey man, if you I'm gonna work really hard to make this cool for you, but take a different feat because it's not gonna work too well.
Has anyone seen the new observant feat? Does that do it? Maybe.
That's a good guess. That's a very good guess.
One of those feats, I don't remember if it's observant. There is a feat that doesn't allow you to be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Alert.
Yeah.
At least the old version was no surprise, +5 to initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Wizards and Ward Drive says my next session 0 is going to be a 2-hour rule clarification. If you're planning to jump in,
Yeah, I wasn't going to make a 5.5 video because I already made so many of them, based on all the UA stuff and the fact that, there's so many videos out already because the people got it early. But I might make a video just for my players.
Yeah. Kelf says that Observant has quick search. You can take the search action as a bonus action. Is that confirmed? 5.5 Observant is updated, or is that maybe in the UA?
It makes a lot of sense to me. That would be Yeah, and then Keen Mind has quick study. He's saying that makes
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm into it.
Huh. Interesting.
All right. So
That was UA.
What's
Yeah.
your way?
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah, but I haven't heard much about the feats from the UA. We're gonna have to wait a couple of days till somebody puts out a video on it.
Yeah. Next slide.
Yeah. So Jim, this is your new exhaustion condition. You've been asking about this for a while now. Here you go.
Oh, are we talking about it? Did we talk about invisible? Did we cover everything in here?
I think the key part about the invisible was the part about the advantage on initiative.
They did get rid of like pulling up that Crawford tweet from 8 years ago, where like if you're invisible, it doesn't matter if the guy can see you. You're still invisible. Like that is clarified out of this, which I am very happy about.
Yeah, that was the other thing about this. That's there was one more thought I had on invisible was technically, if you played it strictly rules as written, you could cast see invisibility and I could cast invisible, and I could still have advantage to hit you and you would still have disadvantage to hit me, even though like that doesn't make sense. Right. So the wording has been cleared up on that. So that problem was solved. That was the other thing about this. I forget how this wording changes that, but it does.
If a creature can somehow see you, you don't gain this benefit against that creature, which felt obvious, but like, so yeah, that's another conversation I'm glad to never have again.
Right. Yeah.
And it was I don't know if it was actually a tweet or if it was something that Jeremy said in a video, but yeah, it was controversial when he said it, and has remained controversial. And yes, Crawford was just wrong about that.
Yeah, this is my game, not his. Don't pull. You pull up Twitter. I do not recognize that.
And
I am the authority here.
Yeah, so exhaustion now it's very similar to what we saw in the playtest, except for instead of 1 point penalty per level, it's 2 points penalty per level, which I think makes it stronger and more like exhaustion. It does add another rule though, because they couldn't just keep it that simple, of course. They add the other rule that it also reduces your speed. So you just have to remember now that it reduces your speed by 5 feet for every level of exhaustion.
I think I still prefer the UA version, but I will take this as a win.
Yeah,
because it is better than 5th edition exhaustion. No longer do you have to consult a chart, and I think my problem with 5th edition exhaustion was that one level of exhaustion you don't even really care about.
Right.
2 levels of exhaustion you don't really care about. 3 levels of exhaustion, we're stopping everything to leave the dungeon and go sleep in an inn for 3 days. Then we'll come back to the dungeon. Because anything above 2 levels of exhaustion is a complete game breaker. So, I never wanted to hand it out as a dungeon master. And usually if I would hand out 1 level of exhaustion, we would all forget that it happened anyway. Mm-hmm. And people are just rolling regular on their ability checks. So I was like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where this now you can have exhaustion tokens and you stack them up in front of the player. They have 3 tokens and it's easy to see, So, that's what I would probably do if I was specifically putting exhaustion in a dungeon for some reason, right? Is I would have exhaustion tokens prepared to help remember it. But it's all you'd have to do is look at how many tokens they have in front of them. And okay, you got 3 tokens. That's -6. I think it's definitely better than the old version for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I also liked that rule.
I liked that too. We'll see how the multiplier effect works. It's funny. Yeah, the crafting rules again. Maybe we can get more of them in the DMG, but they sure talked a lot about them, and I was looking forward to them. And we didn't really get a lot.
They're in the slideshow, Ryan. We'll get to those in just a minute.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah. Jeremy Crawford really talked them up in one of those videos, where he was
sure
like,
did.
you know, got a big giddy grin on his face, pushed his glasses up, and was like, "Oh, I can't wait for people to experience these disappointing crafting rules," which was all about.
So this is one that I thought was a simple fix for what was kind of an annoying problem, is that before you had to make an attack roll to throw acid or throw alchemist fire, right? But it was an improvised weapon, so you didn't get your proficiency bonus on it, right? So then it was like, well, how do I become proficient in throwing acid if I really want my character to like throw acid or alchemist fire? Well, now they've just changed it to where the target makes a dexterity saving throw. So,
A grenade that you spent 2 weeks crafting in a lab is not improvised.
right, yeah. Yeah, so this is a simple fix. Just make it a saving throw, then you don't have to worry about proficiency or what bonus you're using. It's just you hurl it at the creature and they make a save throw. I thought that
now
was
it's their problem.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I'm on board.
All right.
I wonder if it specifies anything about an area of effect from using these, because like in Baldur's Gate 3, that's why you would throw it. You'd throw the alchemist fire because you want to set the stuff around the people on fire. You'd throw the acid to create a puddle that everyone's going to have to walk through. So I wonder if there's anything about area of effect from thrown liquids.
As a DM, you could certainly make greater versions of these, just like you have health potions and greater health potions. You can make greater acid and greater alchemist fire, and then you could come up with a simple rule for a puddle of acid or a splash effect with the alchemist fire.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And players will like it. And everyone wants to watch the world burn the second they get at the table.
So here are the crafting rules. I didn't put the slide in here of the actual rule description, but there's specific rules now that spell out how long it takes and how much and the resources you have to spend to make it. So it's basically half. So if you want to make a alchemist fire that costs what was alchemist fire? 50 gold pieces. So it costs you 25 gold pieces in raw materials, right? So and it gives you time. So it's all spelled out pretty plainly, I think. But these are the actual different tools here, or at least some examples of them, and they have the watermark on it. You can see that this is Chris's copy that he got from Wizards. So, which he's free to share now that the embargo is lifted. But I thought it was interesting. They watermarked all of these specific to the person who received it, just in case somebody leaked it. But yeah, so now every tool has an ability that's connected to it, what you can do with it if you use the new utilize action, and then a list of the items you can make with these tools. So it gives you very specific things you can make with each tool set.
And to be fair, it's better. Like, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, but like when you hype me up, I make an imaginary version of it. And like, okay, most of the time that is going to be better than what we get. There's some good in here, and more than we had 10 years ago.
Yeah. So Jim, what don't you like about it?
I guess I was just expecting more. I don't know. I mean, it is better. I feel like before tools were largely just a narrative element. If I'm playing a ranger, I'm probably gonna get proficiency with woodworking tools because I gotta craft arrows. But it doesn't mechanically give me any kind of benefit to crafting arrows. And like I played in a campaign where I got jeweler's tools, proficiency in that, because I thought it would help us. My thinking was that eventually, once we got high enough level that we were collecting diamonds, that I could use the jeweler's tools to cut them down into smaller sizes, for greater restoration and revivifying, that kind of stuff. But it's all narrative. It's all dependent on the dungeon master's approval. And so I do like that this is better. I need to study it a little more, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think you could still do all that narrative stuff on top of this. I think because the only restriction this puts on you is like if you were thinking, I want to make healing potions with my brewer supplies, right? But you have to have the herbalism kit to make healing potions, and you can't make healing potions with your brewer's supplies. So that would be the only restriction that this introduces. I think beyond that, all the narrative stuff is still available to you. But at least for someone who's not willing to do that, right? If you don't have a DM that's like, no, you can't do that because it's not in the rules, you at least have something specific you can do with each tool. Well, two specific things, right? There's an action you can take with each set of tools, and there's at least one item you can craft with each set of tools.
Kelf, there is a formula for time to craft. I briefly saw, I think, D&D Shorts talking about it in a video. I don't know if that's coming up on the next slide. Brad's got surprises for us.
I didn't add that one in.
It's not that different than it used to be. No, I'm thinking of the spell scrolls actually, but it costs half as much, and it does take time. I think most of what's on here is a day. But there's something about plate taken.
Yeah,
it's a day per X amount of gold, like it used to be.
Yeah, in the video, I think it was Will from D&D Shorts who said it was like the gold piece amount divided by 10 is the number of days. So the example was plate mail worth 1,500 would take 150 days.
Mm-hmm.
Twin Steel says 1/10 of the cost in days, which I don't know if that's how it was in 5e. Like 10 work days. You got to take weekends off.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it's a 10 day. The week is a 10 day in Forgotten Realms, at least. So I don't know what the labor unions have gotten away with in Waterdeep, but
and I want to say there was also you round up to the nearest day. So if it's something really cheap that you're making, it would still take you a day to make it.
And this is all okay, but it could be so much better. And if you're gonna give me little hints of a downtime section of play, bolster that a little bit more. Again, it feels like a lot of it's left to the dungeon master to just improvise and make up, which is fine. That's the name of the game. But give me something. You sold me 900 pages. Where's my downtime?
Yeah. Well, and we might get more of that in the Dungeon Master's Guide, right? They're promising that the Dungeon Master's Guide is just as thick as this player's handbook is going to be. So we might have some more guidance on downtime activities.
I am cautiously optimistic.
Hopefully they'll take the stuff from Xanathar's and make that part of the DMG and improve on it, because that's still needed more. Next slide.
I think that's it.
And that is it for there.
Big thanks to Brad and Treant Monk. Teaming that for us.
Yeah.
Big thanks to Chris from Treant Monk to getting that video out so that we can have this discussion, because we are not cool enough to get advanced copies.
No, it's cool. We're like punk rock. It's fine.
Yeah.
We're so indie. They couldn't handle us. That's why they wouldn't give us all. We're too fiercely indie, which we may talk about in just a minute. But the next thing on the agenda to talk about is a Kickstarter that I found, or I heard about it on probably some podcast, I don't remember. But the 80s Adventures, a 5e supplement and adventure module for D&D. This is a Kickstarter. It says it funded in 15 minutes. Which is the new thing in the TTRPG space, is Kickstarters blowing way past their expectations very rapidly.
I think that means we need to do this Kickstarter, guys.
Sounds like it.
Well, hey, gang, as someone who's done a Kickstarter, you get to set what the funding limit is. So it's very. I mean, no hate on this. And I funded in the first day because I set the line.
Yeah. So this gives you 12 subclasses, 50 tubular magic items, 30 new spells, 50 new monsters, 10 versatile layers like the Maul. GM resources, 30 nostalgic locations, and some of these subclasses are things like the Way of the Crane Monk for you to do your Karate Kid fantasy, the Pact of Greed Warlock for your Wall Street inspired character,
My new favorite BBEG.
the Path of the Dance Barbarian for your headband and leg warmer inspired barbarian character.
Flashdance.
Yeah, and there's also some modules. Let's see if I can blow these up a little bit, make this a little bigger. The Curse of Garnet Lake, Camp Spellbrook, Caretaker's Descent, Rhythm of Rebellion, and Wintertide Lockdown. With some the Curse of Garnet Lake inspired by Slasher Flicks, Camp Spellbrook, Summer Camp Comedies.
Before you scroll back up a little bit, show me those books again. So Brad suggested that I make a one-page one-shot of Die Hard last week. And one of the Wintertide Lockdown, I don't know if you can tell, but that is Bruce Willis lookalike with the torch in the. That's like the icon. Like these guys are doing it right.
Trapped at the top of the Merchant Guild town under siege by extremist orcs, your party must outwit and outfight the invaders in a high-stakes holiday showdown. Yeah, that is straight up Die Hard.
I like it.
Crawling through the duct with the torch.
And if you squint, you can kind of see where they're pulling their. I like someone who wears their inspiration on their sleeve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I want to play Flashdance. I want to play.
Die Hard.
Jason.
Mallow golems, Zoggles of the Outer Plains, dire rodents.
Yeah, so I see an ROUS and I see the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. What's my little guy in the middle?
Gremlin?
Is that just a gremlin, but it's purple? So I don't. Yeah, that's a gremlin. Okay. I like it.
You definitely got the Mogwai ears going
Yeah,
on there on the side.
Yeah.
I just think this is awesome. I fully support this. I love neon glow of 80s nostalgia. And yeah, so for $30 you can get the base thing. $50 you can get that and all the adventures, or for $50 you can get the base rules in PDF and hardcover. So I haven't pledged yet because I'm still debating which one. I think I might want to get it in hardcover, so I might have to go for the $95 core set, although it hurts my heart to give a Kickstarter $95.
Yeah, I have to check that out. I was actually on my short list is Evil Genius Games Everyday Heroes, which has gotten some love online recently, and it's designed to do like modern day, like it says, Everyday Heroes. So I was gonna buy that book, but now I'm gonna have to compare and decide if I'm gonna get Everyday Heroes or this 80s one.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on 80s adventure before we move on to what might be our controversial and dangerous topic?
I might have to watch Tron tonight. It's been a very long time.
Oh,
And
Tron. Yeah.
I don't know if it holds up the same, but man.
I mean, the special effects don't hold up, but the story's still solid.
The new one was okay. I mean, the new one's not new anymore, but the...
Yeah.
I think the new Tron is like 20 years old now.
No. It's not 20 years old.
Wasn't it?
It's probably...
I'm scared to find out.
it's at least 10 years old, because I remember watching it with my son, and he's only 24, so...
Dad, what's an arcade?
The Neutron was the first time I had seen digital de-aging.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
that. Jeff Bridges shows up, and they de-aged him, and I was in the theater. I didn't know it was coming, and I was like, holy crap, what the hell is that? What did they do to his face? Okay, Kelf says it was December 17th, 2010.
I told you not to tell me.
14 years ago.
That sounds right. My son was 10 when we saw that. That's more accurate. Yeah. My oldest son, I've got more.
Yeah.
Because I'm a glutton for punishment.
It did give us another Daft Punk album. That is an excellent point.
Yeah. That's the Daft Punk Alive the live album is my "It's late at night and I need to drive fast and not fall asleep" album. And my wife didn't know that until just recently, and she's like, "What is this? Who are you? This is not you." I was like, "This is. I've been doing this for 30 years. Like, this is the vibe. This is what's
It's
up. Roll down the
robot
windows.
rock.
Let's go.
No.
Don't let me cross 100."
It's robot rock, baby. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is I'll kick us off here, and then maybe Ryan, you want to take over.
Oh, no, but I will.
So recently, over the last couple weeks, there's been an increasing flood of 5.5 content from big YouTubers like Jenny D, Nerd Immersion, Bob World Builder, D&D Shorts. These people have been putting out videos where they've been interviewing people like Jeremy Crawford and doing sponsored content where Wizards has very smartly gone out, reached out to the community, and given cold hard cash to big time influencers to actually talk about 5.5. And this has led to a pretty severe backlash from some people in the YouTube community. You know, us YouTubers, anytime we talk about a thing that exists, we get called shills, but the shill conversation has escalated a lot since this has been happening. And so we've seen Nerd Immersion, Bob, World Builder, D&D Shorts, Indestructo Boy, and maybe even a couple others doing explanation videos of explaining their actions. So there were the videos, the reaction, then the reaction videos. It's almost like a YouTube apology tour, but they're not necessarily apologies. They're explaining their actions. And so the three of us were sort of talking about this sort of toxicity in the hobby, and YouTubers getting paid, and reaction videos. And so we just wanted to kind of put it all out here as a discussion about how all these things are intersecting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the toxicity is on the internet. And it's very easy to assume that like what you are seeing is representative of the majority of people on both sides of the screen, gang. Like I see I just watched those 4 YouTube videos, and what those folks are struggling with, I struggle with, is like the comments. Like, I know we're small, so like I know you guys, but like when you have a wall of comments, it feels like a unified voice coming at you, and then it's confusing when you're getting hate no matter what you do, because there's different camps of people who just derive joy from yelling about things they don't like on the internet, which is so fascinating to me. So like I truly made it this week, guys, because somebody spent 90 minutes hating on what they thought I was going to say for 11 minutes of a video. And it's like so many people out there are spending so much of their time and energy not liking things. And I've seen a ton of comments of like, why is this D&D stuff on my feed? And I've been like, because you typed this comment, and this machine is going to give you what you respond to, because it doesn't care how you feel, just what you give your attention to. Hate gets clicks, and some people monetize that. Some people lean into that and maybe are feeling the weight of that toxicity that they've planted and now are selling. But like it's a complicated mess, and it's so much freaking smaller than we think. But it's easy to lose sight of that when it's right on your face. Like,
yeah, my personal experience has been with the fact that I cover multiple editions of the game. So like I've got a chunk of fans who came to my channel because I do AD&D and old school, content like Shadow Dark and stuff like that too. But then whenever I do a 5.5 video, I get feedback from those fans who don't play that game, right?
mm-hmm.
So and at times I wonder, well, maybe I just need to pick just one and stick with it. Like if I'm just going to do 5.5, or if I'm going to do, cover the older edition stuff. But I like covering the old edition stuff because that's what I grew up on. I want to be able to do both because I like both, right? So, but there's also the fact that with the OGL debacle, there's a lot of content creators who spent a good part of last year, being very vocal against WotC, because that was the cool thing to do and you were getting a ton of clicks for it. And now some of those same creators get a free copy of the book, and now they're making 2024 content, right? But I can think of good examples too, like Ted from Nerd Immersion seems like a genuinely good guy. I met him at Green Dragon Fest, and he's had some criticisms throughout the OGL, right? The debacle and all that. But he's also continued to consistently cover 5e and 5e news, right? So I feel like he did a pretty good job of, speaking his mind and being critical in some ways, but being positive in others. Like I think he struck a good balance. So I think he's a good example. But I can see why some fans, kind of develop a loyalty to a creator because they're hating WotC and they're saying all the things the fan wants to hear because the fan is mad at WotC too. And then you turn around and do all this new content for the new edition. But I think ultimately this all boils down to the fact that you and I can be friends and we can have a different opinion, right? Like if I can't assume that because I like what you say and I like what you do 80% of the time, that you are never going to say something I don't like or that I disagree with, right? Because you're your own person. So maybe 20% of the time we do disagree. But that doesn't mean I've made a mistake by following you, right? It just means I don't agree with you 20% of the time. It also doesn't mean you betrayed me, right? Because I've spent all this time watching your videos, and now you said one thing that I don't like out of the thousands of things you said prior that I did like.
Well, if you're never disagreeing, then one of you is either not being honest or not thinking. Like that's what's up.
First up, I want to say congratulations to Ryan. You got your first angry reaction video, which is a great milestone.
It was a wild experience.
We're
I'm
not
still
going to tell
processing.
You.
No. Don't feed the trolls.
We don't want to promote this, but yeah. Every hobby has toxicity in it, and our hobby is no exception. And there are a lot of people who will hate WotC no matter what they do. WotC could establish $1 billion fund to save puppies from burning buildings, and these people would find a way to say that it was some kind of evil capitalist scheme. There are people who are just going to hate on WotC. I think calling someone a shill is the luxury of people who don't have to pay bills. I think that I think that there are a lot of fans of YouTube creators who expect us to be opinionated journalists, who expect us to be like Vice News. Like Vice News, I don't even know if it's around anymore. I think it went under, but was a journalistic outfit, but they had a very specific opinion in their journalism. They had a slant, and that's what a lot of our followers, our viewers expect us to be. They want us to be journalists, but have a very specific slant that aligns with their own. And a lot of times we're just guys who like games, and we want to talk about that. I try to be fair if I do a review of a game system, I try to be fair, and I never intentionally say that I like or don't like something. I never set out to review a game with an agenda behind it. Like I did a review of DC-20, the new game from Alan from the Dungeon Coach, and I found that I liked quite a bit of it. There were some things I didn't like, and I felt like I was extremely fair in my review. And Alan saw my review. He commented on it, and he said, thanks for the review, even though there was things I didn't like about it. And I said that in the video. But there were lots of people in the comments who took me to task because they didn't like the game more than I did, and they were upset that I wasn't more critical of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I don't align with the things they don't like doesn't impugn... That's not the right word. I'm kind of getting lost here. I don't think I have a responsibility to do anything other than say my opinions.
Right.
When I'm making YouTube content.
Right.
And it's a deeper problem. I don't think this is a TTRPG problem. I don't think this is a YouTube problem. I mean, if you're in America right now, I think people don't expect journal. Like Vice News 20 years ago had more integrity than a lot of what. I don't care where you are. You hate half of them at least. It's strange, and and those voices are very loud, and it's very easy to overestimate how many there are. Because the amount of people who are buying D&D books, who are watching YouTube videos at all, is a very small percentage. But there's more of those. You know, I make a video about D&D, I get a lot more views than if I make a video about another thing. Straight up, it's just a numbers game, and like some people are trying to earn a living. And like, what do you do for work? That's so perfectly unambiguous. Like, how do you fuel your car? Like, how do you exist in this society without having any questionable expenses or income streams? Like,
right.
And it's a game. It's we're a bunch of dudes talking about nerd stuff, having fun playing games. And if you're not having fun anymore, take a breath and look around and figure out how you're spending your time.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is, I mean, YouTube is not a great source of income. It's just not. You know, none
of us are rich or famous, and we won't be. Like, there's an overestimation of like what we're. Yeah. Did
you see Seth Skorkowski's comment on one of the? I think it was somebody's video, where he said. He was talking about sponsorship, and he was like, "Hey, if Wizards of the Coast paid me $5,000 to wrestle Professor Dungeon Master in a pool shaped like a D&D logo, a pool of spaghetti shaped like a D&D logo, I would do it." Right? You know, there's a lot of things I would be willing to do if someone threw a huge chunk of money at you, but like.
And that brings us to our call to action today, folks. Donate now.
Let's make this happen.
Come on.
It's a grassroots campaign.
Jim and Ryan will wrestle in a D&D shaped pool of spaghetti.
It's gonna yeah, $5,000 and a plane ticket. Let's go.
I want 10K, but you know it's negotiable.
5 each.
We'll talk about it. All right, we'll see.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys. It takes me like 6 to 12 hours of work to make a video. You know,
it fluctuates wildly, but yeah, sometimes I'll spend a week making 10 minutes of content. Sometimes,
yeah. So you know, it's you can easily. I've definitely spent more than 12 hours making a video, right? And you know, what you get from YouTube doesn't even come close to covering costs per hour, right? Like that's crazy. So you know. These creators are going to accept sponsorships, you know, but like Bob clarified that there are sponsorships where you just get stuff, right? So someone gives you free stuff, you make a video about it, right? Then because I did that with Sky Zephyrs, right? There's like we'll give you a copy of the product if you do a video on it, right? And you know, so there's that kind of sponsorship, but then there's the other kind of sponsorships where they actually pay you cash to make a video. And my understanding is all the recent 2024 content has just been we give you the new book so you can make content. The videos that were done like last month, where certain creators had specific things that they got to reveal early before the embargo on the NDA, those videos I think they got cash for.
Mm-hmm.
But So there's two different levels to this. Sometimes you're making a video just because you're getting free stuff and like, hey, this guy was nice enough to send me some free stuff. I'll make a video about it, right? Like you're not getting rich doing that.
No. And gang, like, okay, so the alternative, I forget who spelled this out because this has been rattling in my brain all morning. But like the alternative is these people, I mean us, like we don't charge Wizards of the Coast, but we charge the little guy. Like, is that the solution? That doesn't seem fair and equitable. Now you're giving WotC an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they supposed to do here? Will's donating it to charity. Cool. That's an awesome short-term solution.
Right.
And like good for him. That's a great answer to this Gordian knot, but like I don't know what commercials pay for all of the things you see for free on the internet all day, every day. It's not just this. Like, cut to commercial or we steal your information and sell it. Like, one of those two things is the reason you're getting this for free, guys. Usually both.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to be a sellout. I fully subscribe to Maynard James Keenan's quote from the Tool song, I sold out long before you ever even heard my name. I sold my soul to make a record, and then you bought one. Would go with that if I could. I would. I will wrestle Ryan in the pool of Jello for $5,000. Make it happen. If somebody wants to pay my mortgage for a month, I will wrestle. So there was one other thing. Speaking of controversial topics, this is almost old news now because it happened about a week ago. Hasbro had I think it was their financial call, and CEO Chris Cox said that we are going all in on becoming a digital play company, and they're supposed to focus on digital play, $125 million capital envelope for video games, 1 to 2 new yearly releases from late 25, early 2026. So quite a lot of YouTubers have reacted to this statement, and it has become very, it worries Galaxy Fox. And quite a lot of YouTubers made some very reactionary videos around this, and it got a lot of play. And I wanted to bring this up because you two, Ryan and Brad, are two of the most reasonable YouTube creators I know. You are not reactionaries. You are not sensationalists. So do you two have a take on this?
You want me to go first, Ryan?
Go for it. I definitely have a take on it.
I personally think that anything said in a shareholders meeting is mostly hot air. What you're telling your shareholders is what they want to hear, right? You tell your shareholders what they want to hear, and most of it is blah blah blah. We're gonna make you money, right? And so there's buzzwords that get thrown in there. So it's like blah 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 digital, blah blah blah. We're gonna make you money, right? So that's what you do in a shareholders meeting. Is you throw out whatever the new hot buzzword is, and you tell the people that they're going to get richer because of this, right? That's your job when you're in that shareholder meeting. It doesn't necessarily reflect the actual, destiny of the company, if that makes sense.
Have you ever told your boss what you think they want you hear? These are their bosses.
Right.
Synergy. Yes.
And a while back, it was, the MCU was, printing money, right? And then Wizards of the Coast said, we're going to make movies. And they didn't make money at movies. So now they're like, we're going to make money with digital because video games make even more money than movies do. So.
Yeah, and, as much money as Baldur's Gate 3 made, Wizards of the Coast didn't make a lot of that money.
Mm-hmm.
They licensed it to Larian, and so they not letting Larian make Baldur's Gate 4. They're gonna bring it in house, but the last time they tried to make an in-house game was I think it was called Dark Alliance. It was a Drizzt game. I had it. It was crap. So unless, if they want to spend 5 years like Larian did and have a multi-year open beta to refine the game, then they could do that. But they're going to need money a lot quicker. And like a lot of people in the comments on this video have been pointing out, people talk about AI quite a bit because that's the next big thing, and that's what the shareholders want to hear. People, us, we're not excited about AI. I just read that Taco Bell is doing AI in their drive-thrus, and that's thousands of jobs that are going away because a robot can take your order when you pull up through the drive-thru. I'm not a fan of that. I think that's bad. But a couple of years ago they said something about AI dungeon masters. It was basically just like a whisper on the wind about AI dungeon masters, and I'm sure the shareholders loved it. But we all freaked the F out hearing that. The robots are taking our gerbs, taking our DM gerbs.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of this, too, is Hasbro just showed that they can make a crap ton of money on mobile games, right? Monopoly Go, like, crazy amount of money in, like, a very short amount of time. And it's, like, it's a dumb game. It's pointless. So I think Hasbro has the potential to make a dozen Monopoly Go's. Like, they have access to all these different intellectual properties. They can make a ton of mobile games and make a ton of money that way. I don't see them really making a lot of money off D&D compared to the money they just made off of Monopoly Go, right? I think they can make a lot more money with their other intellectual properties, turning those into video games. As we've seen with Baldur's Gate, it takes a significant amount of work to make a good D&D game.
And now they're going to make their own, which is going to be compared to a lot of people's favorite game of all time. Seems like not a great recipe.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I think, Wizards of the Coast is still going to be making books for a while.
Yeah. I think the writing's on the wall that they're going to go hard at digital. Like they can't get on the investor call and be like, we're going to cut down trees and put words on them and send them through the mail. But at the same time, the writing's on the wall. They've been trying to make their walled garden of D&D Beyond for a long time. And do I like it? No. Am I surprised? No. Am I worried? Not. No. I'm going to buy the books. D&D Beyond is a useful tool. I'm not subscribing to the VTT. I'm not running my games on there, but I'm also not like investing. I'm not going to buy stock in their competition at the same time. Like they hired the guy from Blizzard. They're selling. I don't know how much money they've made on dice that don't exist, but they make money on dice that don't exist. Pretty soon they're going to make money on minis that don't exist. Right. These digital goods are here to stay, and their job is to make money. Yep. And the pleasing us is a secondary goal. Displeasing us loses them money, which I think they keep finding out and not learning because it's a revolving door. There's no institutional memory there. I don't think it's going to work, and even if it does work, I'll make my own game with blackjack and hookers. Let's go. Like you can't touch me. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm not worried for the hobby, right?
Yeah,
because D&D will always be whatever WotC wants it to be, and there will get to a point, I'm sure, where I'm going to stop playing the WotC made games. I got to that point with Games Workshop years ago. I stopped playing Games Workshop made games because there's so many better alternatives out there for a far cheaper price, and eventually I want to design my own game. So once I design my own game, that's probably going to be the game I play most, right? So, it's only a matter of time before I stop playing WotC games. In the meantime, I've always enjoyed D&D, and I'll always pay attention to what D&D does, and it'll always be a part of my channel, I assume, right? Unless WotC does something really dumb. But ultimately, for me, the hobby is about tabletop role playing, and D&D is a big chunk of that for me right now. And but that can change, but that doesn't really worry me, because we learned from the OGL that the community is perfectly capable of making really great games without a big company. So I'm not particularly worried.
And I'll say to everybody out there who's mad about YouTubers and voicing their opinions loudly, I mean, one, do that, please. But two, D&D is the entry point. New people are coming more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to show up where they are and be like, hey, this thing that you like is terrible, and this is why you should come with me and hang out and do, like, nope, that ain't working. That's not going to get you anywhere. You have failed your persuasion check, buddy, because you took disadvantage, because, like, you forgot that you're talking to a human being here.
Meet people where they're at.
Meet people where they're at.
Yeah. Right? And I think I wasn't trying to cut you off, Ryan. I was
no. That's succinct, perfect.
Yeah.
And Jim was trying to cut me off because he's gonna go.
The move to digital music is make music something you can actually own. We did discuss that a little bit ago. Physical music is more of an oddity. We need to be alert and protect our hobby. I've thought about this when I didn't have Apple Music and Spotify growing up. If I wanted an album, I had to go to the Best Buy and spend $15 to get it, and then I just had that one album. I had it forever, but it was just that one album. Now you pay $15 a month to have access to all music that exists in its entirety in the world. And it's very different. I think people value digital things differently. Music, I don't think music is worth as much. I don't think movies and TV shows are as worth as much culturally as they were when physical media existed. Because now you can listen to any music in the world. There's no reason I'd go out buy a new album. I would listen to that nonstop for a month because that was the thing I spent my money on, and I had it and it was mine. Now, when you can listen to any song that ever existed, why would you listen to the same thing over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
It's just very different.
Yeah, and that's a shift for us as a culture, right? But yeah, I think we can protect our hobby, right? Like, even though I buy WotC stuff and I play D&D, I also buy a ton of indie RPGs, just like I buy a ton of indie skirmish game rulebooks because I love skirmish games, right? That's what replaced Games Workshop games for me, right? So we can protect our hobby by continuing to support each other in this community, whether that's going out and buying whatever the next cool thing Kelsey Dion puts out for Shadow Dark, or the next thing DM Scotty puts out for Easy D6. Me going in buying one of Ryan's supplements on Drive Thru RPG, right? And Jim's too.
Nah, don't mind mine.
My mine are great.
We can support each other, right?
Yeah, and if you sit in the corner and talk about how everybody else sucks, you're gonna be sitting in the corner by yourself. Have fun.
Well, unless you're a Star Wars fan or a Marvel fan, you can sit in the corner and say how much it sucks with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, but you have to watch the new thing to talk about how much it sucks.
Yeah.
There you go. That's true. That's true. I still haven't seen Star Wars Acolyte yet, so I can't talk about how much it sucks or doesn't suck.
I'm not going to watch it for a couple of years because I need that to be quiet so I can make an informed decision about it myself.
Yeah. So should we call it, or do you guys want to tackle one of these discussion topics here?
What do we have left? I feel like we really hit the big ones.
Yeah, I'm talking about the if there's time section down below.
Hey, I'm just going to go on record as saying I was prepared to look stupid about not knowing what magic item you were talking about.
I didn't do a guess.
It didn't happen.
Item. I don't know. I'm not really feeling it. Not really
As someone who
second-guessing
just
that.
shows up here like a player expecting the dungeon master to prepare entertainment for them, I gotta say, you did a lot of work, but you didn't do the one
Ryan
thing
didn't
I
do
was
any work,
excited
but
about.
he's got a lot of thoughts about the other people not doing work.
I was prepared last week for the what's the best TTRPG for noobs and the best TTRPG for noob GMs.
All right, let's do that.
Great question. Great
So-
question.
Go, Brad. Go.
I think those are great questions. So I think one of the best games for new players is Shadow Dark. Like 100%. Love that game. It's streamlined, it's easy to read. Like the rule book is laid out really well. So it's like literally easy to read and it's easy to understand. And the way the character progression is designed, there's random rolls so that you don't have to like worry about am I making the good choice when my character levels up. It's just random rolls. The carousing tables creates this great synergy. We just had that word pop up. The carousing tables create a great synergy because like you dungeon delve to level up and then you can carouse to level up and then you run out of money so you go back to the dungeon to level up some more, right? It's a great game, and it feels like D&D, right? So you can easily take Shadow Dark and say we're playing D&D, and that's a great way to get people into the hobby. The only other thought I had on great games for a new game master is one thing that makes it pretty much easier on game masters is a roll under system. So that would be the only other thing that if I was going to say, maybe if you want something that's even easier than Shadow Dark as a new game master, you could go with like White Hack or Black Hack or one of the other games that's a roll under system, because the roll under system I think puts less weight on the DM to like decide difficulty check numbers, right? So with roll under systems, most of those systems is based on what's on the character sheet. They roll under a certain number to make it happen. So it takes that decision making process out of the game loop where you have to decide on a difficulty check.
I really like roll under, and I've come to recognize that nobody else, the players won't, because big number good, and that's so deep in like the lizard part of our brains. Like that's older than humans. Big more good. So like roll under is elegant and cleaner and simpler, and I can't get any player to buy it.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan of roll under systems, but there are some good roll under systems out there that are very rules light.
With these questions, I'm honestly not sure the best TTRPG system for noob players and the best system for noob GMs. I know what I think are bad systems for new GMs. I think very rules light systems are bad for new GMs. I think Lasers and Feelings is a bad system for a new GM. Because I think the fewer rules, the more experienced a GM you need to be.
That's a good point.
I think 5e is a complex system, but having all of those rules gives you something to look up when you don't know what to do. There is a tipping point. I think probably 5e is better for a new GM than Pathfinder First Edition or 3.5 D&D. There is a tipping point to a number of rules where it goes from here's a nice cushy blanket of rules to lay down on so you feel safe and have answers versus I don't know which one of these frickin' 3,000 tables I'm supposed to look up the thing on. But I'm thinking for players, rules light might be better. But it also kind of depends on the player. If you're playing with a group, so you're a GM, you've got a group of noob players. If they all know each other and they all are comfortable with each other and maybe they all have some experience with improv or some experience with those kinds of games, like any kind of party game, then a rules light system is great, because if they know how to keep things moving, they don't need a ton of they don't need to learn a ton of rules to have fun.
Right.
You can run Lasers and Feelings for your group of friends who've all known each other, and you're like, all right, you are a space marine, you're a pilot, you're an engineer. Roll this dice. This is good. This is bad. Here's your scenario, and they can go. But if you're playing with a group of strangers, people who don't know each other, who aren't comfortable, maybe having more rules in that case is better to fall back on. But again, I'm not 100% sure either way, really.
No, I think that's insightful. I mean, I think it recognizes that like different people are built differently, but like the rules provide a framework so that we have a collective agreement. And like so often, like a lot of advocates for, and I've been very close to falling into this trap for like more rules light, OSR style. Like you don't need all this stuff. And it's like, no, you don't need all this stuff because you've got all this stuff in your brain already because you've been running games for 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
Yeah, I'm starting from zero. I need stuff.
Yeah.
And you're going to get mad at a new person for being new. Again, have fun in the corner by yourself, being a curmudgeonly jerk. Like, what? Supporting people getting started is good, is nice,
Right.
and is more fun. I think a rule. So I can't believe you didn't mention that we played Lasers and Feelings and it was awesome, and you should go watch it.
Put the link up there.
Man, do that. Watch it. It was amazing. I had a great time. There's Lasers and Feelings. It was incredible. I think games like that are like a perfect storm of like an experienced GM and people who've never played anything before. I like people who are not going to fall into the roles of Lord of the Rings because they're not at the same level of nerddom as you may be. I think those are actually potentially really good fits for that. Just like, all right, what do you do? Roll it. Is it a like big number to low number? That's all. You have one number you're worried about. Clean, simple. I don't have to spend 2 hours explaining what this character sheet means. Awesome.
Yeah.
But for the GM, that's a freaking nightmare. If you don't, you are making 1,000 decisions, and they all have to be fair and interesting. And if that's your first experience, that's, I don't know, that's going to break your brain unless you're a special kind of person.
And that is one criticism you could level at Shadow Dark is the rule book doesn't do a lot to explain to the game master how to run a game. And somebody in the chat mentioned ICRPG. And that's another strong contender, index card RPG, because there is a wealth of good DM information in that book, right? So that would be kind of my recommendation if I was talking to someone who's new and wants to run a Dungeons and Dragons like game. I would say, how much of this do you want to read and really learn from reading? Go with Index Card RPG because there's so much great content in that. But if you're not like a reader, if you're not going to sit down and read all that great advice, pick up Shadow Dark and then watch a bunch of videos on YouTube to learn how to DM. Like that would be my advice to a brand new game master.
Yeah. Into the Mist? I've never heard of that one.
I haven't heard that one either.
There's so much good stuff. That's the like. We talked about how don't just hate on WotC, but like there's also people who like there's more people who have never explored anything else. I'm like, man, there's so much good stuff, better stuff out there.
Yeah.
Be adventurous.
Somebody mentioned Shadowrun and said that they had misheard me when I said Shadow Dark. They thought I said Shadowrun. And they're absolutely right. Shadowrun is a very cool setting, but has never been a tightly made game.
I am going to make a 90-minute reaction video to you suggesting Shadowrun to new dungeon masters and players.
Yeah, we played that back in the 90s. I think it was Shadowrun 2nd edition, and we liked the setting so much that we took the setting and I transposed it into a different rule system. I used the Top Secret SI system, and I just ported over all the Shadowrun stuff into Top Secret SI. to make a cyberpunk game. I never ended up making a spell system for it, so it just became pure cyberpunk. But my friends like the cyberpunk genre a lot, but we just couldn't hang with Shadowrun Second Edition.
Grimlore's Gaming Lair recommends Runehammer's video about the Dungeon Master's Oath. I don't believe I've seen that one.
I don't. If I did, I don't know it by that name. He's great. He's great.
He's a fantastic guy. He's awesome. I really enjoyed getting to play with him. Like watching him run a game was awesome.
Speaking of playing games with other people, Ryan and I are going to be playing Nimble 5e on Monday with the guy who invented or designed the game.
Very cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the three of us are also actual playing again later on that day. Not live, but another one-page one-shot club that you will see in a week or two whenever Brad puts it out.
I am pumped. I've done a couple like mega sessions. I think this is my first double header.
A lot of butt in chair on Monday.
Yes, I'm physically going to prepare for this.
It's the Monday. That's going to be on Short Rest Studios channel. So go look up Short Rest Studios and subscribe to him, and then you can watch us actual play live.
Nice.
And you should also definitely be subscribing to this guy so you can see the next episode of the One Page One Shot Club when it comes out, because Brad is GMing the next one where we One Page One Shot Club. What is that, you ask? Oh, I'm happy you asked. I'll tell you. That is the group of us, the three of us, plus our friends Mike and Angela. And we do one-page one-shots. It's a different one each time, and we've mostly had a different GM each time. There are lots of insanity, like we've done Goat Crashers, we've done Lasers and Feelings, we did Elf with the 10-page backstory, which is probably the most challenging session of TTRPG I've ever run. It was fun, and it was insane, and I would never run that system again.
That was kind of my experience with Nice Marines, too, because like that was short. The world burnt down, and I was like, I guess we're done. I think we're done. That was 70 minutes that felt like 4 hours. I don't know what we do now. And like it's a blast. It's a blast. As someone who spends half the time just like watching everyone else be awesome, it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Twin Steel, we're still waiting for Ryan to write his Die Hard one pager.
The 80s guys did it. I can't. What do you want me to do?
Hey, Fred.
Yeah.
I think we're about out of time then. I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. So now we'll put on our inside shoes and inside cashmere sweaters like Mr. Rogers and go watch a puppet show. I don't know where that came off. Mask off.
That was Brad's. Brad.
Oh, yeah, that was mine.
I am a big supporter. Yeah, I want to actually see that. Dude, even, like you should 100% do that. And if you don't, in time, I know a venue where you could play test your experimental one-page one-shot.
Oh, I will definitely make it and run it for us, as part of our one-page one-shot. I don't know if I'm going to get it done in time for the contest though, but I will definitely make that game and we will play it. I'm trying to do a push, like starting next week. I'm going to be trying to do 2 videos a week. 2 videos a week that mostly will not be about 5.5 because everybody else is doing 5.5 stuff. So, but yeah, so
to be on YouTube.
I'm very much focused on getting content out on the channel right now, but I am going to make that game because I want to play it, run it. So, like I said, I don't think I'm going to get it done in time for the contest, but I will make that game and we will play it together.
Grimlore, make sure when you rewatch from the start that you open up 3 browser windows, all our live streams, watch them all simultaneously. That's to get it in stereo. You really have to have multiple browser windows, different monitors. Set
For
up your
legal
balance,
reasons, he's joking. Please observe the terms of service.
set your speaker balance so that one browser window goes to your left speaker, another browser window goes to your right speaker. I've done all the science on this. It checks out. That way you get the full stereo experience of the Casual Friday live stream.
Or just share it with somebody else. Watch it and then share it with 2 friends.
You can do that too.
Yeah.
You can do that too.
That might be a
Like-
little easier.
Like and subscribe to everybody, because I got 3 words for you, and I'm not going to tell you where you're going to find it, but coming real soon. Sexy. Battle. Wizards. What more do you need?
I know.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, everyone. I am Sexy Battle Wizards are coming to your town, so be prepared. However you feel like you should prepare for that. I'm GM Jim. Over there is...
I'm Ryan. Thanks,
down
everybody.
there is...
Brad with Diredan.
All right, guys. I'm going to hit the end stream button. It's going to take a couple seconds. Let's do our executive producer, Dick Wolf freeze frame.